Hey, are you ready to grow your business? You have checked out the #1 resource for business leaders, entrepreneurs, startup founders, and managers. And we're going to teach you how to grow and scale your business with real actionable steps. There's no fluff in this podcast. It's just good advice. Check out this episode. If you're a first-time listener, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. And if you enjoy this episode, leave us a 5-star review. Today's episode is with Max Babiner. He's the inventor of Triple Bristle. I got to tell you, I love getting startup founders on the podcast. He's somebody who has seen a need in the oral hygiene world. You got to go to triplebristle.com to find out more about this product. And I tell you, once you see it, it's going to click and you're going to say, wow, why didn't someone else think of that before now? I love what Max is doing. He has some really great insights in the startup world and also the business world. You're going to love this story. Check out this episode. Here comes your good advice. Hey, thanks for checking out another episode of the Good Advice Podcast. Sitting down with Max Babiner today. He's the COO of Triple Bristle that is changing the face, or maybe I should say it's changing the oral hygiene of people all across the world. He's the inventor of the 3-sided toothbrush. And here's the deal. You need to go to triplebristle.com because describing it does not do it justice. But once you see it, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, this makes total sense. Max, it's great to have you on the podcast today.
You as well. I mean, I'm really excited to be here and share about 3-sided sonic vibration brushing. It's once people try it, it's really changed their life, and that's why I'm here. I'm here to kind of spread the message and share with everybody, all the things that have gone so far to kind of get us here in this period where we're scaling and really bringing it to everybody.
Well, Max, it's going to be exciting to hear your startup story, especially, it feels like so many people have so many ideas, like the ideation part of like that next entrepreneurial venture. Everyone loves to sit and think about that next big idea. You've actually taken the idea. I know you guys have either patented it or you're patenting it right now. And you're building something, you're doing something. Like you just said, you're scaling it. So you're doing what many people hope to be doing. So I'm excited to really dig into that story of yours. Now, tell me something. Where are you calling in from?
I'm out of Philly. I live right downtown with my 17-month-old twins.
Oh my God.
I love the Northeast. I'm kind of a fast-talking, fast-paced guy. I don't think I could survive in South part of the U.S. or Cali or anything like that.
Well, I'm in the South, and so who knows, man? You never know what's going on down here.
That's
true. I will say you gotta settle something for me though, because I went to Philly, and obviously this is like the tourist who goes to New York and has to go to Times Square. But so I went to Philly, and I was like, I got to get a Philly cheesesteak. I gotta try the authentic goodness. And my friend from the Northeast was giving me a hard time because he was like, dude, you can't do that. It's too cliche. It's too touristy. You got to just let it natural. You can't seek out the Philly cheesesteak. I need you to settle this. Am I allowed to go get a Philly cheesesteak without it being overly touristy, or is that something only tourists?
As long as you don't talk about it, it has to be a secret. And the only way it's acceptable is late night when it's 3 a.m. and nothing else is open, and you've had a few drinks, and you go get a Pat's or Gino's cheesesteak, then it's the stereotypical Philly thing. But for the record, the best cheesesteak is actually a place called Cleaver's.
Okay.
It's not the ones that everybody talks about.
Okay. Well, maybe a future podcast episode, I need to have it sponsored by them because we're,
I'll bring every cheesesteak there is, and you can try it and right on air, just eat it and people can watch.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm excited to get you on. Let's just dive right in. Maybe a good way to start. And by the way, for the listeners, the way Max and I met each other, this is through our PODMAX event. Every couple of months, we jump on PODMAX. It's an awesome online platform where entrepreneurs and business owners get together. They share their. It's like the world's greatest virtual networking event. You can find out more at podmax.co. So Max and I have met through that. Max, I'd love just to go ahead and jump into your startup story. Talk to me a little bit. Maybe a good place to start would be really how this idea for the three-sided toothbrush came about.
Yeah, I mean, I was younger before I went to dental school. I was selling toothbrushes online, right? Like early 2000, like 2001. And I was selling kind of Oral-B's, Sonicares. And I started, a few years in, I started importing toothbrushes. I saw some early like three-sided brushing concepts, and I was like, oh, this is the obvious choice. And then I reached out to some factories and I said, well, I'd really like a three-sided toothbrush that's connected to a sonic vibration base. And they were like, nope, never going to happen. Manufacturers, they just care about if they can sell something, how many units they're going to produce. So they just didn't see a market. So I reached out to some engineers. I finally found one out of Germany that was like, oh, this is like an easy project. It didn't turn out that easy, but after another few engineers, we got the whole process going, and I manufactured like 1,000 units, and I loved them. I gave them to some of my friends and family. One I gave to my mom, and her gum disease kind of went away. And that's when I was like, I did patent it, and I didn't really start selling them in bulk until we received the patent. And, I tried to sell it online myself, but, I'm a dentist, and the platform for e-commerce changed dramatically from 2001. Like I was the first person doing Google AdWords, and once I kind of came back into the thing, this was like 2012, 13, when I tried to go back in, I was like, wow, like I'm way out of my league here. So as a weird serendipitous event, I was looking for a Google AdWords guy, and the guy goes, super honest guy. He's actually works with us now, but he goes, I could do your Google ads, but what you really need is to talk to my one of my friends, and he's an Amazon super seller or a power seller, and he sells like 700 units of stuff a day. So I talked to him. His name's Brock. He's out of the South Tennessee, and we started a partnership. He got 30% of the company. First year we sold like 200,000 worth. Next year we sold like $1 million's worth. Then we raised a little capital. We figured out how to kind of scale using Facebook ads and Amazon, things like that. And then once we really got going, this year we're 3 million year to date. The success really is just because there's enough people that love the brush and kind of have changed the way that they look at toothbrushing. The big thing, of course, is they try it, they go to their dentist, and, the dentist's like, what have you been doing differently? Your gums have never looked this good. And that's kind of when people become lifelong users. Initially they're like, this is kind of weird. It might tickle. You want me to put that where? That's like the initial response most people say, but then they try it, they give it a few days, and then it's like their gums stop bleeding.
Well, it's interesting when you think about this, because it feels like, I don't want to say like the toothbrush product hasn't changed much. Obviously it has. Obviously they've innovated. Obviously, it's kind of like when you're not in the industry as just a regular consumer, you see a toothbrush and you're like, oh, that's a toothbrush. But so when you look at your product, and I'm on for the listeners, I'm on triplebristle.com. That's triple BRISTLE.com. Hard to spell today. The first look at it, there is this sort of sense of, because it's probably the most marked visual innovation that someone may not be accustomed to in their dental world. And so at the same time, it's also kind of interesting because like, as I'm looking at pictures, I'm seeing pictures of it on the tooth and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's almost like, I wonder why this hasn't been thought of before because, like you and I were talking about before I hit record, there are 3 sides to the toothbrush or 5 sides or whatever. There's more than just the top side that you're brushing at any given time. Tell me something, as you were creating this idea, did you have people who were like I know you mentioned the factories or the places that were like, we don't really want to do that. It's not really profitable. Did you have people who were like, dude, what are you doing? Like, just stick to the normal toothbrush. Why are you trying to create this? Like, what was that process like early on for the business?
I did it so slowly. I didn't just jump in feet first because I'm like a pretty risk averse person. And I didn't want to do anything where I was going to spend a bunch of money just to have products. Because like I said, I did sell toothbrushes before. I did get into a scenario a few times where I had stuff sitting and, collecting dust for 2 years. And that's the worst case scenario. Inventory that doesn't move. You don't want to be there because it's just, and the initial round of people using it and trying it, I only made 1,000 units in the beginning. Most of the feedback was positive, and then I finally got the patents approved, and at that point I was like, well, it's not as risky anymore because it's not just me loving a toothbrush. I have feedback from, a consumer base of different demographics. And it seems to work. Like my mom's gum disease went away. So I thought, it's definitely at least worth a shot. Now, I never imagined that it would eclipse my dental office in terms of revenue. But, I'll tell you, it's even now, the main thing that scares me is I don't know what I don't know. And I'm super passionate about this because I know that this is kind of one of the biggest needs out there. I know that oral hygiene is a huge problem for so many kids. And the largest, the biggest disease in the world is dental caries, cavities. So I know this is a needed thing. It's just, how do we communicate to the masses who are used to this flat, regular toothbrush, that what they need is something that, envelops their tooth and vibrates like crazy. That's what they need. How do I explain it? That's been the biggest challenge. And that's kind of what we've been working on, is creating a customer experience around 3-sided brushing.
So talk to me about how you said it yourself a second ago that you didn't really anticipate this eclipsing the revenue of your own dental practice. How have you, because something that's really common in the entrepreneurial world or the startup world is someone's jazzed about an idea. And as they start to put legs behind it and they start to see the momentum building, they're kind of like, oh my gosh, this isn't just an idea. This actually has some steam that could end up being very profitable. And one of the biggest challenges is, do I quit my day job? Do I jump full into this thing? And there's a lot of debate around it. There's a lot of dialogue around it. People who will say, stay in that other job for security as long as possible. And then you have other people who are like, and I'm kind of teasing them a little bit, but they're like, don't have a fear-based mindset. You need to quit and just jump in full force. And hopefully it goes somewhere. Sometimes it doesn't. How have you balanced building this brand with running your own business? And obviously they complement each other a little bit, but they're two separate entities. Obviously the goals are a little bit different. What does that look like, building this startup while also managing your full-time career?
Well, I think in my case, one of the things I did very early on, and this is something I do in my dental office too, you will never kind of get to scale unless you delegate almost everything. So, in the Triple Bristle sphere, I still do a lot of work. Most of the work I do is product development, quality control, talk about the brand. But there's a 16-person team behind me in the Triple Bristle world. And those guys are all full-time. and they're all incredible. I mean, none of that would be even remotely possible, what we're doing now, without this amazing team. I think being a dentist and being that world, I think that's good for me because
Max, I think I just lost your audio for a sec.
Atmosphere, but there's no like person standing behind it that's like, somebody that's like at the top of the industry knowledge. But in the office, I have like a 13-person team, so that all I have to do is like come in and practice and leave. And in Triple Bristle, we have a 16-person team where everything's kind of done, and I'm there to do the high level strategy and just make sure we stay on track and don't run out of money. That's been the big challenge. Yeah.
What keeps leaders from, because I think you're spot on, that delegation piece is so crucial for anyone wanting to grow their business. And yet it is so hard for a leader to do that. How have you built trust with your team? How have you, is this something that's always been part of your nature of allowing them to do what they are able to do? 'Cause I'm curious how you've sort of denied that own sense of ego, control. This is my baby. I got to have every hand in every pot or every jar. How have you gotten to the point where you can just so easily, I trust them, I delegate to them, I let them do what they're great at? Because you're talking about, and you said it yourself, this high level strategic thinking. It's hard for business owners, I think, to transition to that because they are so obsessively involved in the day to day. Has that been second nature? Is that something you've grown? What does that look like for you?
It's something that's happened to me as I got older. I just found that at a certain point, unless, once something grows to a certain level, it's much bigger than yourself. I'm like a small piece of this puzzle. That's really what it comes down to. And at the end of the day, like the beautiful thing of having a corporation is like that thing is its own entity, and there's people driving behind it. In most cases, I'm just looking to see where I can be most helpful. But, anybody that thinks that they're going to be able to, grow something super big without pretty much giving away control of everything, it's just not realistic. Because once you hit, I'd say once we hit like 1.5 million, we were like, oh my God, like we need a logistics person, because we didn't even realize we were running out of inventory until it was way too late. And we had these like moments where it's like a month or two where it's like we didn't have any toothbrushes to sell because we didn't calculate the sales velocity. And the person that does it now was the postmaster for Guam. And Guam, that sounds super random, but it's one of those territories where if you want to ship to Japan from the US, everything goes through Guam. So, the volume that he saw was far more than anything we would ever do with Triple Bristle. So, now that he's on, we no longer run out of stock. And we didn't have strong financials. We had like a bookkeeping type position, but we didn't really have a CFO. We didn't have a financial model. And I didn't even know I needed that until I talked to an investor, and he's like, where's your model? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, how do you know where you're going and like what you're going to sell? And I was like, well, we just chug along and see what we're selling. And he's like, well, that's, I'm not going to invest in your business until I see a model. And so, we got this. And then now that we have him, I was like, oh my God, how did we ever operate without this guy? Like, this is lunacy to think that you can do this without like some level of strategy and some level of assumptions. And that guy's instrumental. He's like, what are you guys doing? Like, you can't be doing this. Like, look at where your cash flows will be in 3 months. And then we're like, oh yeah, that's a good point. We should probably think about that now. So it's all kind of been a big learning experience for me. But your point of delegating is critical. You have to have the right people in the right place. And the one thing about me, it's part of my personality. I don't second guess people, and I like let them do what they do. Like my office manager in my dental office, like she does everything. She hires everybody. She monitors stuff. She makes sure the billing goes wrong. She makes sure everything's fully staffed. I come in like an employee in there. Similar here, everything's done. We have a full-time tech team, business development marketing team, financial team. And I'm like trying to, putting the puzzle pieces together, figure out where, how do we get to the next place? The one thing I'll say is like retail and service is so different. So I have those two spheres and they're like, nothing is similar about them. There's no inventory costs like in dentistry. And with this, that's the largest cost, for the holiday season, we're like stocking up like crazy. And because there's a 3-month lead time, it's like, you need to have the cash now for the stuff you're going to sell in 3 months. And then once you sell that stuff, you're going to need double the stuff again. And you're going to need more cash for that. Plus you subtract the revenues you're going to get. So it gets crazy once you kind of get to that sophisticated level of, 3 million plus in revenue. And we're not profitable. I mean, 3 million sounds like an amazing, figure, but we have a subscription program. We're doing all this marketing. We're like growing. We're more focused on saturating the market and delivering 3-sided brushing than we are. I make no money from Triple Bristle. Personally, I take no income. The team does, but not me. And the part of that is, it's a greater vision. It's much bigger than myself. This is an important thing to do because if I don't do it, we're going to be stuck on flat brushes, forever. So that keeps me going.
Well, and it's amazing hearing your humility as a leader, because it's just uncommon because let's chart this path a little bit for a second here. We're talking about, you're mentioning selling toothbrushes all the way back to the turn of the 2000 year. I mean, let's think about how long this was, almost 20 years ago. So, and then being in dental school and becoming a dentist. I mean, obviously you love toothbrushes. So there's probably not anyone that who's more qualified to be invested in this idea than you. And to hear you talk about taking it from not just an idea to an actual working business to a validated business that's bringing in, like you said, $3 million annually. And then for you to say, hey, it's not about me, it's bigger than me. That's an incredibly humble thing to say. And it's especially uncommon. I don't have a question with that. I'm just a bit surprised, only because it feels like that ability to let go of your own, again, your own ego, thinking of you at the center of it. I think it's harder than people make it seem. And I think it's especially pretty rare. So credit to you for making that the DNA of your business.
Thanks. I think that's just part of my personality. I was never like a take control guy. I'm always like the relatively chill, see what happens guy.
Sure.
But I'll say it. I'd say this to anybody that's like in the beginning stages, like definitely make sure that whatever you're pursuing is something you would be doing whether you get paid or not. I would say that like if you're doing it to, make an income or like cash out big as an exit, it's just not how it works. And this is something I learned, like when I started, I kind of thought about it like, oh, like I'm going to grow this business and sell it. Like nobody wants to buy like just a business, they want to buy something really cool that you built. Like, for example, one of the things we're doing is, we partnered with a special needs dentist. So now one of our big pushes is, something called dental desensitization, where for special needs individuals, they practice for the dental appointment before actually going to the dentist, and it helps them have a more successful appointment. So they may not need to get general anesthesia for like their cleaning and dental stuff. And then there's a little toolkit where like parents or caregivers can brush their teeth and floss and do all the stuff that's really difficult normally for them. And that's like something worth pursuing. And three-sided brushing just generally fits this population really well. So there's a certain level of like legacy you have to kind of put into your business about like your big why, because I started this in 2014. It is now 2020, almost 2021, and like I said, like there's no income for me coming in, but I work almost as much, if not more, on this than in my dental practice. So there's something bigger than me and bigger than everybody, like a global idea that's driving this. And that's what kind of keeps me going and, making sure that I spend time on it. That's my biggest advice is don't expect money out of it. Do something really awesome that matters. And then naturally, once you have something incredible that everybody loves and is excited about, that's when people want to acquire you because, you've built something greater than yourself or anything. And that they were not able to do it themselves,
Well, I think there's there's two types of people who are listening to the piece of advice you just gave. I think there's the seasoned entrepreneur or the startup founder, whoever who's listening to you, and they're saying, "Yep, retweet exactly. That's so true." And then you have the maybe person who is they're a brand new entrepreneur or they're a wantrepreneur. They love the idea of entrepreneurship. And they are incredibly discouraged by what you just said, only because, and I'd love to get your take on this, today's entrepreneurial rhetoric, what you see on social media, what you see on Facebook, what you see on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever, it isn't this portrayal you just gave of, now about to be 7 years deep in this journey and still not taking a paycheck from it. What gets presented online and digitally, and it's what a lot of these new entrepreneurs get really jazzed about, is this from idea to insane profitability in only 6 months, or in only, I saw one that was like from 0 to 7 figures in 90 days. And
I whoever can do that, I am like so impressed. And like, it's just, what, like everybody I've spoken to and like, even like the seasoned founders that have had an exit, like it's just not that fast. Typically, it's just not that fast. Of course, there are the unicorns and like the amazing 0.0000000000001%. But like the ones that truly make it and do it, like it's going to take at least 5 years. It's going to take a huge chunk of your life. Mm-hmm. There's a big chance, 95%, that it will never work out. And like when it does work out, it's because there's so much grit and crazy risk taking that only happens when you believe that what you're doing is worth this personal risk. Like as an example, right now to get this inventory, we don't really want anybody sitting on our board and ruining what we've done. So we have not pursued like the massive venture capital, but we have a predictable sales flow and we've got everything. But in order to get all this inventory, we're taking on like close to 700,000-800,000 in debt for the business. Now, a lot of it is tied with a personal guarantee. So if there's a crash and burn, I am on the hook. Like I would literally be risking like my family's money, and I have twins. So it's like they're young kids. So there's a certain level of like risk there where like, or you know what, I'm going for it. We're 5 years in, but they're still risky, So it's like, it has to be driven by a deep ideal you're pursuing. Otherwise, you're like, this risk isn't worth it. And then, the company will never grow. And without the growth, it's already dead.
Mm. Well, and there's nothing sexy about what you just said in the sense of, grit and grind for 5 years plus. I heard a guy who gave a similar statistic. He's out of Beverly Hills and runs a dental practice over there. And he said, yeah, it's about 5 years to actually grow this thing. But for me, it took 10 years. And so when people hear that number, they're like, Well, geez, 5 to 10 years. That's a stark difference from, again, 0 to 7 figures in 90 days. And it almost makes me wonder really where this goes long term for the entrepreneurial world. Because what's getting clicks isn't the story that you just told of I've been grinding 7 years, and it's obviously really exciting. It's pretty incredible. What gets clicks is, do you want to create the next Amazon? Here's how you can do it in the next 30 days. And it's kind of like, it's disingenuous, but the naive entrepreneur almost doesn't know any better.
They're going to find out. I mean, once they start it, you find out. Like I've done several like small ventures like that were all myself with like maybe a 1 or 2 person team that just didn't work out. They just like fizzled out and that was it. Mm-hmm. This is the only one where it's kind of remained. And I think the main reason is I had a really good partner who understands business development. And I put in so much effort in the beginning, and like, this is an idea from scratch. And then we realized the social benefit because there's a huge application to like special needs individuals. And so this is the one that stood out. But I mean, I've had like 2 or 3 that just like, I spent a bunch, some money on, and it's like, I just don't want to spend time on this, and that's what I was saying. Make sure you want to spend time on it for free.
I love that.
That's critical.
Well, we're running out of time. You've already given some incredible insights. I got to ask you one thing. You mentioned you have 17-month twins. So not just one. I have a 7-month-old, and she's so cute and amazing, but man, she is exhausting me. So I don't know how you've done it with twins. Talk to me a little bit about that work-life balance. How's it been being a dad and also running not 1, but 2 businesses?
Like I said, you have to delegate everything. Like, that's why, in the mornings I wake up and I spend the mornings with them. And then I come home, I spend, an hour with them before they go to bed. And then, I have 3 hours to, bang out any Triple Bristle stuff. And then Fridays, I'm, doing Triple Bristle all day. And then throughout the weekend, but, with a pretty demanding Hispanic wife and all this other stuff, it's absolutely critical to delegate. And we have some help, but at the end of the day, it's about, I don't think that I would be doing any better if I did not have them. It's one of those things where like, if you take a lot of classes in a semester and it's more credits, you actually do better than like, if you like just do 2 days a week and it's a less amount of credits. Cause it's like, you're busy. So you have all the time you have is ultra productive. Cause you're like, I don't have time to like, twiddle my thumbs. So, I have this time for this. When I have this 1 hour, I have to like use this hour, like really use it, no social media, no anything, like get this deck done, do these pitch presentations, all that. So, time management, I think the busier you get, just the more productive you are with the time that you have.
Well, let me ask you this. Will my baby ever sleep through the night?
Yes, there's sleep training. She's 7 months. It's like super easy. There's a book called 12 Hours by 12 Weeks. And it's super easy. You just reduce the amount of food you give them at night and like slowly. And what ends up happening is they just eat more during the day. It's not like you're starving your child.
Yeah.
And they stop waking up in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Like mine were sleep trained by like 4.5 months. But we only did that because we're twins. Twins, like, if you've never had twins, it's like if you've never had a child, it's like, what's it like being a parent? Like, no, you can't describe it. Like, you have to do it, What's it like having twins? Like, you have to understand. You have to do it.
Yeah. Well, Max, tell me, I always like at the end of the show, I always like to give my guests an opportunity to share a little bit about what people can do to learn more about your product, what they can do, especially with the holiday season, if they want to buy your product. What does that look like for my listeners?
We have some amazing offers. We have a subscription offer. If you just want to try it It's like less than $20, and you try it, and you can cancel anytime. But we ship you fresh brush heads every 3 months. Or we're on Amazon. We're on triplebristle.com. Um, Everything we do is backed by a 30-day money back guarantee. So, if three-sided brushing doesn't end up being for you, that's fine, but we kind of make it completely risk-free. My thing is, try it for 5 days, go to your dental hygienist, see what she says. That's really when you'll become a believer. But, it's one of those things that you don't know you're missing until you try it. So I really encourage everybody to give it a shot, because, next level gums and teeth, it's, the benefits are just incredible.
Great. Well, Max, it's been awesome having you on the podcast today. I appreciate you joining.
Oh, thanks so much for chatting. I really had a good time.
Great. Hey, for our listeners, definitely check out more triplebristle.com, or you can find it on Amazon. It might be the perfect gift for this holiday season coming up. Also, hey, if you enjoyed this episode and you're not subscribed to the podcast, what the heck you waiting on? Click that subscribe button so we can keep bringing you good advice wherever you are. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure you leave us a 5-star review. Check out the Patreon, patreon.com/good advice to become a sponsor of the podcast. Hey, fam, thanks for listening. We'll catch you later. See ya.